One of the weirdest things in Heroes of History Epic Empire is that some of the strongest accounts I have seen didn't actually start by building a strongest hero. And some of the weakest account I have seen has one absolutely insane hero. At first, that sounds completely backward because when you start the game, everything teach you the positive. You pull a strong hero, you get excited, you dump resources into them, they start caring, you clear campaigning stages, you win fights, your account power goes up. Everything feels great, and honestly, I thought exactly the same thing. And some of the old veterans, when I actually start playing the game, also noticed that. That, for example, my Medusa, this is my what I did back in the days. My Medusa was level 60, and rest of my heroes was level 40. So I also thought exactly the same thing. If a hero is scaring me, why won't I keep investing in that hero? If the hero is strong, if he's having great damage or some manipulation or some stun or is perfect tank, why should not keep investing in this hero? Why won't I make them even stronger? The problem is that this strategy works. Now, this is the problem that this strategy actually work right up until the moment it doesn't. And when it stopped working, it stopped working hard because eventually I start noticing something. The players with the strongest single heroes often were often the players complaining about campaigning woes. The players complaining about hero shortages. The players complaining that certain content feels impossible. And that's when I start asking myself a question. How can somebody have a hero that is 30, 40 levels ahead of everyone else and still be stuck? Should that account be crushing everything? But here's what I realize. A strong hero and a strong account are not the same things. And I think a lot of players incidentally confuse those two things because early game progression rewards specialization, late game progression rewards flexibility, and those are completely different things. And I'm not only talking about flexibility in form of if you want to go in the treasure hunt, you're going to need more teams. Obviously, there everybody know that you have to have this thing. I'm talking about the flexibility. For example, you have Hitsusuit as a healer. You see she's a AoE healer, but you need somebody more faster, single target healer, and this can be Ashoka, or in general, just having some healers there. And a level 150 heals feel amazing when everybody else is level 80. Now, I decided to make this crazy, difference just to see about the healers. And a giant Tutankhamun feels incredible when he's carrying the battle. The problem is that eventually the game starts asking different questions. It stopped asking how strong is your best hero and start asking how many problems can you roster solve. And those are not the same questions because once you hit harder campaigning stages, something interesting happens. The enemies stop being stat checker, they start becoming a roster checker. Suddenly your damage dealer isn't enough. You need healing, you need crowd control, you need taunt, you need survivability. You need another team entirely. And that's where the things get painful. Because if the 90% of your investment went into one hero and you don't have those answers, you have no really strong hero. And for you have one really strong hero and four problems. And I think it's exactly why so many players hit progression wall. That feels unfair. Not because their account are weak, because their account is narrow. That's a completely different problem. And honestly, I learned this lesson the hard way. Whenever I got a hero that start carrying my account, my instinct always say, okay, let's keep feeding that hero. This is what happened with my Medusa. I mean, I was going with her over and over again. She was like level 60, the rest of the heroes was like level 40. Right now, I have still have big difference here and there, but it's like 10 levels, which I cannot say is some crazy difference here. But yeah, I was thinking, okay, let's keep feeding this hero because it feel efficient. When you feed that strong hero, it feel efficient. The hero is already working. Why should you stop? Why spread resources around? But then I start noticing something strange. Every new hero on my strongest hero feel less impactful than the previous one. Meanwhile, a few levels on a support hero completely change what my account could do. And that's was a huge realization. And this for me personally happened with Abraham Lincoln because his ability is a game changer, especially when you want to avoid some heavy hitters that can basically one shot your hero. So I have this experience with the support hero because most players think progression is about making strongest stronger. But a lot of the time, progression is actually about fixing weakness. And those are very different investment strategies. Then I notice another pattern. Players often judge hero too early. A hero doesn't perform, so they stop investing. A hero feels weak, so they ignore him. A support doesn't top damage chart, so they don't look that the support is important. But later, those same players suddenly need exactly those heroes. And now they have a new problem. Not only do they need the hero, they need months of progression they never invested in this hero. So yeah, you may actually want to have, Abraham Lincoln, but if it's like level 50, you're fighting content with your level 70 Medusa. Even though here the Abraham Lincoln is specifically for one thing, I believe this hero should also get leveled up, and I'm going to focus over him. But imagine if you need at level 80 content hero that is right now level 40. You need start investing in this bad boy. It can be mastery points, it can be levels, it can be Tesla station materials. All these things you just have to start investing in this hero, and it's actually needing months of progression at one point, especially if you're an endgame player. And this creates one of the biggest hidden account traps in the game: delayed investments. The heroes you ignore today are often the heroes you wish you had built 6 months ago, especially heroes. And heroes are probably the best example for the entire discussion because nobody gets excited about healing. Let's be honest, you pull a damage dealer, you're excited. You see giant numbers, you clear content, you feel powerful. You pull a healer, most players think cool, and then never touch them until the day they need them. And suddenly they realize they don't actually have one. I have seen this happen over and over again. Players hit a fight, their damage is completely fine, their tanks are completely fine, but the fights was long enough that sustain become a problem. And now all those ignored heroes investments come back to haunt them. But here is the weird part. I don't think the real mistake is over investing in carry hero. Because honestly, every account needs a carries. The mistake is never looking behind them. The mistake is never looking behind them. The mistake is assuming the carry will always be enough. The mistake is believing that future content will ask the same question as a current content. For example, you have Medusa or you have Maria Curie. This is absolutely crazy good hero. But in the same time, the content is ewy. You do crazy work with Maria Curie, but at one point end up to be just heroes. So there is couple heroes. Maria Curie damage is still, good, but it's not good like hitting couple clusters of the troops. So it's just different questions from different content. And yeah, it's not going to ask the same question in the future because it won't. And that's where I think most players get trapped. They build for today problem, not tomorrow problem. Today the problem is damage. Tomorrow the problem is healing. The next week the problem is survivability. Then it becomes team depth. Then it becomes multiple teams. Then it becomes specific counters. And to be fair, the game is just keep changing the question, but the game also leaves some hints. It's also leaving some hints. It's going to ask you for Tesla, where you have to have purple heroes, to level up in the Tesla. So by default, you cannot just have like one purple hero. You want to have like 5 to progress there. At the same time, not only Tesla, if we go in the treasure hunt, here is depending, is also asking you for more teams. So from this point, I can actually say the game is doing good job for navigating by content the roster of the players. But still, many players keep giving, the same answer. And eventually that answer stopped working by investing in one solid hero. Then I noticed something else. The strongest account rarely look efficient. And I know that sounds weird because everybody talk about efficiency, but when you look at the mature account, they often have invested that seems strange. A hero there, a support there, a utility hero, a crowd control, heroes that don't immediately look exciting, but together they create that flexibility. And by flexibility, I mean you should not actually, going for all of the heroes, but definitely, I already mentioned Hitsusuit, great AoE healer, great also giving some charge ability, but it's having initial charge and regular charge, and which is high 9.4 seconds, 12.1, and here a shocker 5.6, 7.5, way more faster, way more nice single target healing. So you can see here the difference between these two heroes. This is giving my account flexibility. If the tank is dying, I'm going to use a shocker. If the tank is not dying, but I get a lot of AoE damage, which the damage is spread between my heroes, I'm going to need Hitsusuit. This type of flexibility we're actually looking for. And flexibility is what solves progression problem. Not the raw power. Raw power solves one problem. Flexibility solves many problems. And once I start looking at the accounts through that lens, a lot of things suddenly made more sense. The players progression, the players progressing the fastest weren't always the players with the strongest carry. They were the players with the most answers to the content. And that's a completely different way to think about progression. So if there is one thing I can tell new players is this: don't ask which hero can carry me hardest, ask what problem may my account have 6 months from now, because the heroes that help you today isn't always the heroes that you will be happy you invest in later. And I think that's the real reason here. Most players don't level the wrong heroes because the hero is bad. They level the wrong hero because they invest as if today problem will be tomorrow problem too. And in Heroes of History Epic Empire, that's almost never true. So I'm curious, have you ever had a hero completely carrying your account, only for you to realize later that your roster has become way too narrow? Let me know, because I have feeling a lot of players have made these mistakes than they are willing actually to admit at the end of the day. Because I already mentioned I did this mistake with Medusa. I was liking this hero so much. He's giving the damage, he's giving the stun, he's reducing the attack speed, all these beautiful things that this hero is doing. And later at one point she was just not enough. Then I start having tank issues, my tank starts dying. I was having first king minus, then king then I level up a tank, but still the tank was dying. So from there I actually focus over the healers, and it's like this path of improving your account at the end of the day. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit one like, subscribe, and if you want directly support my channel and get early access to my videos, you can become a member of my channel. So I wish you a great day, and see you in the next video.